Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Questions and Answers. Just before we took the break, I spoke to you about our upcoming show for next Friday, something different, something I hope more engaging and interesting. So please book that in your diaries, and something which is quite long as well, or longer. Anyway, till then, we will go back to what we normally do, which is our questions and answers. Now I would suggest is to get on the calls. We have about half an hour or so before we part company. And it's good to get the calls in early. So the number to call is 01274 214 299. That's 01274 214 299. And if you wish to email, it's q&a@iqra.tv. So we have a caller who's called. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear caller.
I have one point that in the whole Muslim world, nobody even take notice that all the ulmas and like muftis and scholars, they don't get wages through proper from government, and they have to collect money from people, and it's like charity in whole Pakistan. I experienced that they all in mosque, it always through people, and then they have to leave them as beggars, that they have to beg for the money from people. I know that people give money, but sometimes they don't even give 500 rupees or whatever they need to give, and it's very, very low income as well, and in that kind of money they can't even run their houses, or how they're going to be like leaders of Ummah, and on the other side how they will create those kind of personalities which we need in this Ummah. And that's why people who don't want to study, they send them to madrasas, and those type of people, I'm not saying, I'm not humiliating something, but it's our mentality that people who are intelligent, who are very, very brainy, they go to this worldly education, and that's why there is bridge and gap and everything, and why we don't get together and speak on these issues, because there are only few people, or maybe 100 people, or maximum 1,000 people take advantage of all the political affairs. That's why, because it's lacking education and everything, and people who scholars and muftis, and they don't have proper money coming from proper channel, proper from through government, and at least they should be secure through government, that at least they have basic payment. And why don't we try to stress and demand from our governments to give them proper wages?
Okay.
Even cleaner in Pakistan, they get proper wages from government.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, sister. Okay, so I think the point the sister was making was particularly to do with Pakistan, if I heard correctly, rather than to do here with the UK. So I will try to answer as best as possible, but not being fully aware of the social customs and culture of Pakistan. Even though my parents are from northern Pakistan, I've only been once as a 10-year-old boy, so I can't base my a whole opinion of a country on my experience for a few weeks as a 10-year-old boy. So I will just give in a more general sense. And I think what the sister was bringing to our attention is the issue or the concern that we have, because some of those issues can be relatable here in the UK. Obviously, the government are not in the least interested in terms of our religious inclinations and whether we go to the masjid or not, and whether we have scholars or not, unless obviously it's seen as problematic, and then obviously some other law will come in for other reasons. But generally speaking, it's the community's responsibility, and this is the key point. This is not necessarily the responsibility of ulama or responsibility of muftis or responsibility of scholars or imams or anything for that matter. As I was just explaining yesterday, 40 odd years ago, I was just a normal person like everybody else was a normal person. And then somehow, alhamdulillah, our destiny was written to, learn a couple of things and end up in the situation that we've ended up. The point is that it's the community that has to ensure that Islam and its establishments and its scholars are there. A scholar who is currently, teaching, say, in a maktab, or a scholar that is doing some other work, he or she can easily give up that work and get paid significantly more, even doing something as simple as packing a shelf or something. And again, I'm not belittling that task. It's halal earning, and it's using one's hands. And those are tasks which the Prophet ﷺ used to encourage. He used to say, utilize, earn from the service of your own hands, so that you actually can feel what you've done. So it's not something that we should belittle. We all think that we have to have some highly technical job. Absolutely not, because if everybody is going for a highly technical job, then society would not function. We all work in whichever area that we end up in. And therefore, so if we may raise this point, and, let's not, I know the sister raised particularly about Pakistan, but I rather bring the focus here because I can't influence what goes on in Pakistan. I can hardly influence what goes on in England, but at least there's a better chance of it than of what's going on in Pakistan. We spoke just a few weeks ago, or maybe like yesterday, those parents who are sat at home listening now, when you take your child to maktab, how much do you pay fees at the maktab? £2.50 a week, £3 a week, £4 a week, let's exaggerate and say £5 a week. Okay, £5 a week. And that's £1 a day. £1 a day, and then normally your children will stay at roughly 2 hours. Okay, so that's 50p an hour. 50p an hour. You think about that yourself, in terms of what you're actually giving to the masjid, 50p an hour. And now out of that 50p, let's take all the costs out, because that 50p is not going to Imam Sahib, that 50p is going to the masjid. So the masjid will have its own costs, electric, gas, rates, whatever else, carpet usage, I could go on. So maybe out of that 50p, 10p is left over, or 8p is left over. And that is then given to the ustad. So when ulama teach in maktabs, they ain't teaching for the money, let me tell you that. They're teaching because they want to continue to provide a service to the community. What they will do then is take on a second, third, fourth job in order to actually have an income. They're not teaching maktab for an income. And I read somewhere, Maulana Ashraf Ali Tanwi rahimahullah ta'ala wrote, that, this is how we value our faith. This is the value that we attach to our iman. And if the ulama do step aside and take a regular day job, the ulama won't suffer. The ulama will still teach their own children maktab. The ulama will still teach their own children how to pray salah. The ulama will teach their own children how to understand hadith and tafsir and fiqh and waghaira. It's the community that will be at loss. And not only just at loss that they won't be able to recite the Quran or they won't know how to pray salah, they will lose their iman. So the next time you pay your, madrasa fees or whatever else, don't just think about, I'm saving £5 here because I'm paying £20, £25 an hour for private tuition so my son gets a good GCSE or whatever else that we're going for, and I'm going to pay 50p an hour here because I don't really care if he gets into Jannat or not. Can you imagine the logic that's going on inside a person's head when he's making those decisions? Anyway, we may come to that. I know there's a caller waiting, so I don't want them to wait any longer. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear caller.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In UK, we have fixed wages for ulmas? We have fixed wages anywhere in the mosque? No, we don't. I wasn't talking about Pakistan. Yeah. I was talking about everywhere.
Yeah,
we need to
hold on, sister. Sister, hold on. I can't hear you. Let me just correct. Did you say 6 or fixed?
I'm saying as a community, do we fix wages for ulmas?
That's just what I was. Imam? That's just what I was talking about.
Hello.
Yep, that's just what I was talking about.
One more point, please. That. As a community, we have a responsibility towards everything else, but we need to fix wages because there's so much tafarqa and so much even selling your religion and bowing your head towards those people who earn money in the name of religion, and those kind of things develop because of this.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan. So, yeah, I think maybe the sister's not watching the show as we're talking. Again, that's exactly what I was talking about the 50p that's giving to the madrasa and the £10, £15, £20 that we give to the teacher who's going to teach a GCSE and whatever. So that's the value that's we attach to it. But that's, again, the community. It's not the ulama that are paying the madrasa. They're already sacrificing themselves for those 2-3 hours in an evening in order not to spend that time with their wives or their children, in order not to spend that time earning maybe a higher wage doing something else, but instead providing a service to the community. And then what you're going to get is eventually even those ulama will think, look, I cannot make ends meet. And so what you will get is inexperienced teachers who are teaching your children then. Either they will be inexperienced, or B, they will not be qualified to teach your children. But the masjid can no longer recruit ulama, because the ulama can't make ends meet when they're being paid whatever they're being paid on a weekly basis. And remember, this is not, again, the ulama that have done this, because the ulama would not shortchange themselves. It is the community, and this is what we need to keep stressing. It is the community, because the committees who run the masjids, the community that support the committees that run the masjids, are the ones who ensure that they hire and recruit imams to teach their children. Now, if you're not getting the standard in your child's classroom, would you tolerate that if it was in a school? If your child was still struggling to read after 2, 3, 4 years, would you still say that's fine, it doesn't matter, it's okay? No, you wouldn't. You'd kick up a fuss. So in the same way, if you've got 30, 40 children in a class at maktab, based upon the fees you're paying your maktab, then, and they don't finish their Quran for another 5, 6, 7, 8 years or 9 years, you don't just say, well, what can you say? Well, you need to take as a responsibility and say, right, our masjid, alhamdulillah, is bringing in X amount of thousands of pounds into the masjid. So what we should do is we should minimize our class sizes to only 20 or 15 or whatever, so that the teacher and the student interaction increases. But that will obviously come at a cost, because instead of having one teacher teaching 30 children, we're now going to need 2 teachers teaching 15 children each. The quality will increase, but that's going to come as a cost. And if you're going to give, if wages are going to be set in such a way that that person is not in the least bit interested, and therefore you're going to get unqualified, inexperienced people teaching your children, then the results are going to speak for themselves. And in the United States, for example, they have a completely different mindset towards ulama, in terms of how they're looked after, in terms of what they're offered, and in terms of the standards they get in their teaching as well. Huge difference. So until we get over this issue, until we address this issue, then unfortunately that is what the situation is going to be. That's so just again, clarification for the sister, because she said I wasn't speaking about Pakistan. The government will not support in the UK funding for maktabs and madrasas. That's not going to happen. Maktabs and madrasas are the responsibility of the Muslim community. The government doesn't care less as long as there's nothing in there which is illegal, because at the end of the day they have a responsibility for child protection. But if there's any issue of child protection, if there's nothing, or health and safety, or anything to do with equality, anything which is law, if there's nothing going on with regards to breaking a law, then they don't care really how the community deals with it, what they teach, what they don't teach, and what they pay their staff members. Again, there's obviously the issue of minimum wage and things of that matter, but these things will be looked into, and therefore this is the community that's responsible. So we need to, as a community, be addressing those issues. Otherwise, we will continue to go in the direction that we are going in. And that is, unfortunately, the quality of education will go down. The standard of our children will go down. So the standard of the generation, which were maybe 2-3 generations ago, might be better than the generation that we have now, than the generation after, because at least in those days, teachers had more patience. So teachers knew that they were getting a rough deal, but they said, khair, let's do it for the sake of Allah. Let's do it for the sake of Allah. At the end of the day, we're not doing it for the wage anyway. Allah is going to give our wage. This is just to cover our time, and khair, let it be. But the younger ulama aren't thinking like that. They just see it's unfair. You know, why don't I give some private tuition on the evening to somebody who is studying GCSEs, or somebody who's in year 9 or year 10 or even in year 6 for that matter, and I can teach that and have only 2 children and get nearly 2-3 times as much and have no hassle or headache as well. And there's going to be this brain drain, as the sister mentioned, where the intelligent young children are going to go towards colleges, university, and unfortunately those who can't get a space at college and university are going to end up teaching our children. So it is what it is. And until we as a community address it, then that's going to continue like that, and it's going to digress and regress until eventually, the standard will be a poor standard. So we as a community need to address that. And until we don't, or until we do rather, this situation is going to continue. So again, Jazakallah khair, sister, for making your calls. So we got 2 calls in from her. Let's get some more callers in as well. So the number to call is 01274 214 299. That's 01274 214 299. Get your calls in. Email is q&a@iqra.tv. That's q&a@iqra.tv. We do have a couple of questions via email, which we're going to address now whilst we wait for the phone to ring. First one is it haram to open a business which caters for weddings, birthdays, Christmas parties, or to cater for any Christian festivities? Now, let's answer this question by sort of splitting it into 2. The first thing is a catering business. Okay, can a person open a catering business? That's the first asal question. Then the second question is, can this catering business then serve birthdays, weddings, Christian festivities, whatever? So let's answer question 1, or the fundamental question. The fundamental question is, yes, we can open or start or initiate a business which is providing catering. Absolutely we can, as long as the food that we are providing is halal. That is fundamental. And none of the food that we're providing is haram. So we cannot provide any alcoholic beverages. We cannot provide anything based on pig, anything that's come from any meat, whether it's bacon, whatever. We cannot provide that. And we cannot provide anything else, which is like poultry or meat, which has not been zabah, has not been slaughtered the Islamic way, the halal way. We cannot provide any of those things. That item, which is haram for us to consume, it becomes haram for us to deal in or to get others to consume it as well, because we cannot even purchase it. Because according to us, a pig or anything to do with a pig is najisul ayn, which means it is absolutely impure. And when it comes to say poultry and meat which has not been slaughtered correctly, then that is what we call mayyit, and we can't even engage in that or deal in that whatsoever. Similarly, alcohol is najisul ayn, so we cannot trade in that either. So these items we cannot. So we can only have a catering business which provides halal, both in terms of poultry and also in meat, but also avoids the haram. That's the first thing. Secondly, you've opened this business, okay, and you're now taking orders from people to go, prepare the food and then go take it either to the hall that they've booked out or directly to their living premises. So somebody rings you up and says, "Oh, can I have 3 cakes and some chicken biryani and some this, that, and the other, whatever." So you cook it. Now you find out that they're having a birthday party. That's no concern of yours. Okay, they have placed an order with you and you have delivered it. You get somebody phoning you, "Oh, can you, we want some pakoras, some samosas, we want some this, that, and the other, whatever, chicken legs, da-da-da, whatever. And you say, yeah, fine. And can it be delivered to St. Trinian's Church? Fine, deliver it. You find out when you get there that they're having a religious festival, or they're having some religious recital, and they're going to have some snacks afterwards. No concern of yours. You have cooked halal food and you have delivered halal food. No concern of yours what's going on at that particular point. Your concern is that point there. Even if somebody informs you that, okay, we're making all this food because we're having a birthday party, or even if somebody informs you we're making all this food because we're doing this. If it comes to religious acts, that we're making this food because we're going to worship an idol, or we're going to worship Christ, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, okay, then there is some issue that we can look at and explore. But even then, it would be halal. A couple of more questions already we have here, but before we take those questions, let me remind you of the number, 01274 214 299, and somebody has taken that opportunity and called in on that number. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. कैसे हैं मुफ्ती साहब, ठीक हैं?
जी फर्स्ट क्लास जी, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह। बहन जी आप कैसे?
अल्लाह का एहसान है, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह। मेरा क्वेश्चन ये मौजू से हटकर है। यूट्यूब पर काफ़ी बातें आती हैं, कुरान पाक की आयतें आती हैं, वजीफे आते हैं, तो क्या हम उनको फॉलो कर सकते हैं? जायज़ है उनको फॉलो करना, उन वजीफों को करना, या कुछ ऐसा करना ठीक है या नहीं ठीक है?
जी हाँ।
क्योंकि सभी तो अल्लाह की कलाम होती है ना, वो भी अल्लाह की कलाम ही बताते हैं।
जी हाँ।
तो ये मैंने आपसे पूछना था।
नो प्रॉब्लम।
दूसरा सवाल ही वैसे एक जनरल टॉक है। आपने बोला था कि प्लांट, किसी ने कहा था प्लांट बाथरूम में रखते हैं।
हाँ जी।
तो मैं तो जब भी किसी के घर के प्लांट देखती हूँ बाथरूम में, तो मैं कहती हूँ ये तो अल्लाह का जिक्र करते हैं, इनको हटा दिए यहाँ से।
जी हाँ।
अच्छी बात नहीं है।
जी हाँ।
ये मैं उस दिन भी सुना हुआ कि मैंने आपको फोन नहीं किया, तो आज मैंने फोन किया, तो इसलिए पहले तो वो यूट्यूब की जो बात है उससे पता करना। तो बाकी प्लांट का तो सभी जानते हैं कि हर चीज अल्लाह का जिक्र करती है।
बेशक।
ठीक है, दुआ में याद रखना। अस्सलाम वालेकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातहू।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातहू। अच्छा, पहली सवाल ये थी बहन जी से, ऑक्सफोर्ड से फ़ोन किया था कि अगर कोई देखता है ये यूट्यूब वीडियो पर, तो यूट्यूब वीडियो पर कहीं ना कहीं आदमी आता है या कह रहा है कि भाई अगर आप ये आयत पढ़ ले इतने दफ़ा तो ये इस बीमारी के लिए है, या कि अगर आप किसी को किस चीज़ जो मंगवा रहा है, लेकिन कैसे औरत कहती है कि मैं बच्चे मुझे चाहिए वगैरह, तो अगर ये कर ले वगैरह और वजीफ़ा ऐसे देता है, तो क्या इस पर अमल करना जायज़ है या नहीं? पहली बात ये है कि ये जो अमल करना, ये अकीदा, एक पहली चीज़ है कि अकीदा का मसला है। अकीदा का मसला का मतलब ये है कि अगर कोई आदमी ऐसे सोच कर रहा है कि अगर मैंने ये 10 दफ़ा 20 दफ़ा वगैरह पढ़ ली तो ये चीज़ हो जाएगी, तो ये ठीक नहीं है। इसलिए कि हदीस होने चाहिए, या इसके अलावा अल्लाह सुब्हानहू ने ख़ुद कुरान में ऐसे साफ साफ कहा कि अगर आप ये चीज़ कर ले तो ये हो जाएगी। लेकिन अगर रसूल वसल्लम ने ऐसे बात नहीं की या कुरान में ऐसे साफ साफ नहीं है, तो हम नहीं कह सकता है कि अगर ये आपने कर लिया तो ये हो कि, या इसलिए कि कैसे हम जानते हैं? ये तो गायब का बातें हैं। गायब का बातें को हमको वही से आना चाहिए, यानी अल्लाह सुब्हानहू से डायरेक्ट, या कि अल्लाह सुब्हानहू ने रसूल वसल्लम को इन्फॉर्म किया और फिर रसूल वसल्लम हमको बता दिया। तो पहली ये बात है। सो first situation, just to explain, is our dear sister from Oxford mentioned the question, or raised the question about if you watch something on YouTube and they mention that if you recite this particular ayat X number of times, then it will be solve this problem, or if you say this, Y number of times, then it will get rid of this illness, or if you have a request, like a lady wants a child, and if you read this X number of times, then inshallah you'll conceive, you'll become pregnant. Then this is an issue of aqidah, belief, because these are matters of the unseen. And because these are matters of the unseen, we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to tell us directly, or inform the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, who then informs us. Otherwise, these are mere speculations. यानी ये वहम है, यानी ये जो खुद बात ये है कि अगर कोई आलिम ने ऐसे कुछ कहा, तो हम कह सकते हैं कि ये आलिम अपने तजुर्बा, यानी his own experience, इसकी वजह से उन्होंने ये बात की, that's why he said what he said. We can say that, लेकिन यकीनन नहीं कह सकता. We can't say absolutely without fail. Only wahi is yaqeen, and wahi yani directly which Allah SWT shares with us, or that has come through the Prophet ﷺ, because the shari, the one who brings law, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the second thing is, बात ये कि we don't know, हमको पता नहीं है कि ये आयत है या नहीं है, क्या ये हदीस में आई है या नहीं आई, ये भी दूसरे. तो पहले तो अकीदा है, दूसरी बात ये कि हाँ ये ऑथेंटिक है या नहीं, यानी आयत ये है या नहीं. किसी ने लिख लिया कुरान, तो हमको कैसे पता है कि हाँ हाफिज़ुल कुरान है, तो हमको पता है कि भाई ये कुरान से है या नहीं है. अगर उन्होंने बस लिख लिया सूरह बकरा कुरान, अगर हम सूरह बकरा का हाफिज़ है हम कहेंगे कि हाँ ये आयत है, अगर नहीं है तो हमको कैसे पता है. दूसरी बात ये, अगर किसी ने लिख लिया कि सही अल बुखारी, सही अल बुखारी से 7000 के ज़्यादा से हदीस है, तो हमको कैसे पता है कि ये हदीस है या नहीं. हाँ अगर हम आलिम है या मुहद्दिस है तो फिर हमको पता है कि भाई ये हदीस आया या नहीं आया. So the second point is, well, the first issue is of aqidah, the second issue is of authenticity. What I mean by authenticity, if somebody writes Arabic and then says this is in the Quran, now unless you are hafiz of Quran, how do you know that the ayat is in the Quran? How can you be sure? And if not the ayat of the Quran, if they write the hadith, and when they write the hadith they say this is in Sahih al-Bukhari, and you say, oh look, it's in Bukhari, how do you know it's in Bukhari? Okay, unless you are hafiz of Sahih al-Bukhari, you are a muhaddith, or you have access to Sahih al-Bukhari and you can check for yourself, how are you going to know? So that's the second issue. So one is issue of aqidah, the second issue is of authenticity. So इसलिए हमको जो आलिम है, जो reliable है, मुअतबर है, यानी नाम हम पहचानते हैं, we know who he is, so that scholar who has a reputation, a good reputation, that he is reliable, the ulama support him, यानी और उलमा भी कह रहे हैं कि भाई ये आलिम माशाल्लाह ठीक आलिम है और बहुत होशियार आलिम है, मुत्तकी आलिम है, फिर then we can take it from him. इसलिए कि हम उलमा से इल्म लेता है, we take knowledge from the ulama, so therefore we will take it, but we have to do our tahqiq कि हाँ ये आलिम, what type of scholar is he. So inshallah, with that in mind, then we can act, rather than just thinking, oh this must be a verse of the Quran or this must be a hadith, so we're going to act on it. So in that regard, we need to do, first thing is the aqidah issue, the second thing is the issue of authenticity. Last 30 seconds, with regards to the plant issue, I think the sister had already heard the question previously, and that is obviously, as I mentioned, when we are, before there were toilets, we used to go out into the field to answer the call of nature. So if we're out in the field, what's a field full of? Plants. So, and they would use sometimes leaves to, wipe themselves after. So there's nothing wrong in having these sorts of things in the bathroom. Anyway, we'll speak soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.